The Pittsburgh Steelers fall to the New England Patriots in yet again embarrassing fashion. And at this point, you got to ask, is it time for some serious change? What's going on, everybody? I'm Noah Strackbein. Thank you for jumping on to Steelers to Go, your daily to-go cup of Pittsburgh Steelers news and analysis. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they fall to the New England Patriots in week 14, 21-18. This comes back-to-back losses at home for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But just to make things worse, back-to-back losses against 2-10 teams at home, when you have a chance to really solidify your playoff spot, hit another winning record for Mike Tomlin, and put yourself in a prime position heading into these last 4 games with an opportunity to not just claim a postseason spot, keep your season alive and hopes very high for what could come, but also compete for the AFC North and really the AFC in general. And instead, the Pittsburgh Steelers, 2 weeks later, find themselves just hoping that this season isn't over and that everything isn't dead just because they lost a quarterback and everything around them seems to be crumbling. And it's time to bring up a serious question, a big question. And I know that there's still a chunk of the fan base that is going to hear this and say, I don't know if I'm ready to do that. I think you're overreacting. You have to, the grass isn't always greener. You have to look at this and say, what are the other options? Are the other options really better? And I agree. I think that is a valid argument for what I'm about to say sometimes it doesn't always work out, and you got to figure out whether or not it's going to work out, and that's a risk. But it's a risk all 32 NFL teams make. It is a risk the Pittsburgh Steelers have made in the past, and if we're going to be honest, it's a risk the Pittsburgh Steelers should start to consider right now. The Pittsburgh Steelers are 7-6. They still kind of somewhat control their playoff hopes, but at this point, it kind of feels like everything is crumbling around them and that this team's hope is lacking. There's not much going on. And to make things worse, they become the first team in NFL history to lose consecutive games above 500, to be a team above 500, lose consecutive games to teams below 500, but not just below 500, at least 8 games below 500. That's who the Pittsburgh Steelers were in these last 2 weeks. And you could say, yeah, Mitch Trubisky was in and he looked terrible. He did. He looked atrocious. But everybody on the Pittsburgh Steelers, every single person looked bad. Execution looked bad. Preparation looked bad. And once again this season, it just looked like the Pittsburgh Steelers were outcoached, outprepared, out-executed. And it's time to ask the question. Is it time for Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers to go their separate ways? Turkey may be great on sandwiches, but there's a better way to break your bad habits. We're not talking about some weird mind voodoo from your crazy neighbor, like shouting up to the stars and yelling, "Help!" We're talking about our sponsor, Fume. And they look at the problem in a different way. Not everything in a bad habit is wrong. So instead of drastic, uncomfortable change, why not just remove the bad from your habit? Fume is an innovative, award-winning flavored air device that does just that. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air. And instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses all-natural, delicious flavors. You get it. Instead of bad, Fume is good. That's a habit you're free to enjoy and makes replacing your bad habit easy. It fills the void in a natural, guilt-free way. Your Fume comes with an adjustable airflow dial and is designed with movable parts and magnets for fidgeting, giving your fingers a lot to do, which is helpful for de-stressing while breaking your habit. I got this thing, and the first thing I noticed was how sharp it looks. This is probably the sharpest looking device I own. And then immediately I start fidgeting with it and realize how awesome that aspect of it is. And then when it comes to the taste, I mean, you can't beat the cool, crisp mint flavor It's easily my favorite, and I haven't put this thing down since I discovered it. Stopping is something we all put off because it's hard, but switching to Fume is easy, enjoyable, and even fun. Fume has served over 150,000 customers and has thousands of success stories, and there's no reason that can't be you. Join Fume in accelerating humanity's breakup with destructive habits by picking up the Journey Pack today. Head to tryfume.com/allsteelerstalk or scan the QR code and use code ALLSteelersTalk to get 10% off when you get the Journey Pack today. The Fume Solano launched last November, and you can upgrade your Journey Pack to the Solano to enjoy the premium walnut barrel and onyx black coated mouthpiece that has a smoother finish and still get 10% off. That's tryfum.com and use our code ALLSteelersTalk to save an additional 10% off your order today. Now, this is tough because I grew up rooting for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I've watched the Pittsburgh Steelers my entire life. My dad is a die-hard football fan, and my entire life, all I heard, all that was embedded into my brain was that Mike Tomlin is amongst the greats, that he is a Hall of Famer, that he does things that most coaches do not do, that he pulls things off in ways most coaches cannot pull things off. And I grew up with the understanding that Mike Tomlin does things different and he does things better, and that he's a legendary head coach and he should be treated as such. And so I started my career as a journalist covering the Pittsburgh Steelers with the understanding that Mike Tomlin is a Hall of Famer, a legend in the industry. He is not somebody that you give up on ever. He will always figure it out. You always have an opportunity, a chance, because Mike Tomlin is around. I've now started to turn the corner and look at this in a different light and say, maybe, just maybe, Mike Tomlin is part of the reason, and a significant reason, why the Pittsburgh Steelers are where they are. You just have to look at it in the grand scheme of things. It could go with layers, and you could say, oh, it's Mitch Trubisky, oh, it's the defense, oh, it's the injuries, oh, it's this, oh, it's that. I get it. All those things factor in, and they are good arguments. But there are other things. There are minor little details that the Pittsburgh Steelers just for some reason cannot figure out. The lack of communication on both sides of the ball, the illegal formations on offense that are just every single week. And then the Pittsburgh Steelers constantly wasting timeouts in crucial moments. Why? Because they have no idea what's going on. Against the New England Patriots, we sat there and we watched the Pittsburgh Steelers contemplate whether or not they were going to punt or go for it on fourth down with roughly 5-6 minutes left in the ball game. Already wasted one timeout because your offense had no clue what it was doing at the beginning of the half. Had to waste a timeout there. That clearly wasn't going to come back to bite them in the butt. Oh, wait, it did. And then your fourth down, 4th and 2, you're looking at the situation. Everybody and their mother, every single person on the planet knows that you go for this fourth down. Every single one of them. The Pittsburgh Steelers have to sit there and contemplate it, so much so that they have to waste their second timeout. That is on Mike Tomlin. And that happens every single week. And it is becoming a trend on top of many other trends that the Pittsburgh Steelers just chalk up to execution and poor preparation and whatever. At the end of the day, maybe it's just time that the Pittsburgh Steelers try to find something new. And I'm not saying that Mike Tomlin is a washed up coach, because he's not. No matter where he goes, no matter where he would end up, he would make that team great and he would turn them into a winner. And I'm very confident in that. But sometimes things get stale, and sometimes the way you are operating things does not work anymore with the new people in the building. And I think that that's where the Pittsburgh Steelers are. It's not a guarantee. I could certainly see this season turning around and Mike Tomlin pulling off of Mike Tomlin, and everything's fine and dandy come week 18. But for right now, the last 2 weeks, and really the way this season has gone, you have to look at this situation and you have to just acknowledge maybe Mike Tomlin is a problem. Maybe things are stale. Maybe he isn't having everything under wraps. Maybe he isn't the best at preparing this football team. It doesn't mean that he's not the best at preparing some football teams, but maybe this is the one that he just can't get a grip of. and he can't seem to get into a spot where everything is moving fluidly. Maybe it's the fact that he was too loyal to some coordinators, or maybe it was the fact that he wouldn't push Ben Roethlisberger out the door, or maybe it was the fact that he just refuses to move on from guys until it is the most dire situation possible. And then he says, okay, well, I guess now I will stop being loyal to a fault. Maybe it's all of those things. And maybe it's just the fact that at this point in the NFL cycle and the Pittsburgh Steelers NFL cycle, having a coach that is a player's coach and that motivates guys better than any coach in the NFL just isn't cutting it. Maybe your team is too young, too inexperienced, and just lacks the leadership for you to just walk in the door and say, hey, everybody hold yourself accountable. I'm going to rile you up. Maybe that's not it. Maybe you need a coach that sits down and gets his guys prepped in every single angle for a game. Maybe you need a coach that could come up with game plans that are brand new and exciting and could take over all of the coaching staff by himself if need be, because that's the type of coach that he is. That's not the type of coach Mike Tomlin is. He's not that type of guy. He's a rowdy guy. He's a motivator. He is a guy that constantly makes you want to run through a brick wall for him. And that's great. But maybe the team around him right now isn't built to just do it on their own after he gets them hyped up enough to run through a wall. Maybe that's the issue for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I don't know if you want to blame that on the players. I don't know if you want to blame that on the coaches. I don't know if you want to blame that on Art Rooney or Omar Khan or whatever. What I do know is that right now things are as bad as they could get for the Pittsburgh Steelers. This ship is sinking fast. The fan base has given up, and I can't doubt them. And for the first time ever, and I have been a Mike Tomlin defendant, I have been a Mike Tomlin apologist, I have been a Mike Tomlin, I don't know, it's the same as Deontay Johnson when all that started happening with him. I am a guy that supports these guys fully, wholeheartedly. I believe that it is impossible to replace Mike Tomlin. But I think the Pittsburgh Steelers should consider it. Because right now, I really, really do. I think he's part of the problem. And truthfully, I think he might be the biggest problem.